Hi everybody, it's great to be back here again on Itamar. It is Friday, it's Chanukah, it is Erev Shabbat, and we have a lot to talk about. Today is all about Chanukah and Joseph. That's the second week we're discussing Joseph, and I'd like to talk about dreams because life is all about dreams, and wow, there's a lot of Torah here. Let's try to put it together. I'd like to mention Rabbi Yaakov Ariel. He's the chief rabbi of Ramat Gan in Israel, and I do love him so much. When I have very difficult questions, I always call him up and ask him, and I just really feel he's a great man. And I read this week, I was reading something and that he wrote about this week's portion. He gave me some inspiration for this, for my Torah this week, so I'd like to mention his name and some of these ideas I got from him, and I'd like to get rolling. Let's go, let's begin. First of all, we read about Yaakov Avinu a couple of weeks ago, how he dreams about this ladder on the ground going all the way up to the heavens, and we see the angels going above, going up and down. That's the first dream that we experienced just recently. And later on, last week's portion, we have a couple more dreams, and we begins by Joseph making his brothers angry and jealous when he dreams about the sheaves that they're gathering together, and his stands up, and they're all bowing down to his, and they're pretty angry when they hear this. What are we going to bow down to you? And then again, he goes on to dream about the sun and the stars, and they're all bowing down. They're all again bowing down to him, which again was making his brothers pretty angry. So he dreamt about the sheaves and the stars, and that was Joseph's dream. And then later on, if we follow that, at the end of the portion, we learn about the ministers of Paro. Yes, one of them is the beverage minister. Interesting. The drink minister, we don't want to call it. And so he has a dream about 3 branches of grapevine, and then he takes them, then becomes ripe in the grapes, and he squeezes into the cup of Paro, and he gives Paro a cup of wine to drink, or it must be grape juice, I don't know what it was. And alcoholic beverages are not prohibited. I mean, are they prohibited? And let's go on to the other minister, the minister of the baking, the major chef, the baker. He has a dream about bread, that he has 3 baskets of whatever bread on his head, and then the birds eating from the upper basket, taking away the baked goods that he had for Paro. And of course, Joseph translates these dreams. That the minister of wine, eventually he will be lifted up and exalted. Why? The minister of bread or baked goods will be killed. He will be decapitated and then hung on a tree. And then finally, in this week's portion, Mikaytz, our portion, we read about Paro having a dream about the 7 cows, as we all know, and they're very healthy, and then they're swallowed up by the skinny cows, and then he has it again, repeats the same dream in a different form of the 7 again sheaves, and they are very healthy, and they're also swallowed up by the ones that are very weak. What does this all mean? What are all these dreams all about, and what is the meaning? First of all, I'd like to make a couple of comparisons. We see about the dreams that are dreamt by Paro and the whole Egyptian culture. This whole, you can look at it as that was the Western culture of then. And we see that their dreams are very earthy. What are they dreaming about? They're dreaming about cows, they're dreaming about food and wine. All those their dreams really are focused more on earthly matters, or the Nile, all those things that are connected really low down to the ground. Those are the dreams that these ministers and Paro, they're all experiencing. Because in their culture, of course, they were much more focused on the physical and the physical needs of the human being. On the other hand, very interesting, if we look at Jacob, and Jacob does not skip over the ground. He has a ladder which is leaning on the ground. But it doesn't remain on the ground, because that ladder is reaching all the way up to the heavens and extended all the way to the heavens. So he's connected, of course, to spirituality. He's connected to the upper worlds. And of course, the angels going up and down is sort of mediating and connecting the physical to the spiritual, which is amazing to see how when Jacob dreams, it's much more higher. It's much more on a much higher spiritual level. And if we follow, of course, Joseph is the whole complex issue. Now, what does Joseph dream about? Joseph also dreams about sheaves and stuff like that, and the ground bowing down. On the other hand, they're all bowing down to him on the ground, but the sheaves are all connected to the ground. similar to to Paro's town, turf. On the other hand, Joseph dreams about stars and the heavens, so he's all connected way up there in the heavens. The interesting is we don't see the connection between the ground and the heavens. It's something that the bridge that connects those things that seem to be missing. And I think this is something which I thought of many years ago, which is something that always stands out, and I'll never forget. When a person has an insight in Torah, he never forgets his own insight. And this is something that really stuck out to me. I always said, wait, where is this connection? How does Joseph connect between the ground and the heavens? And we'll get to this later, hopefully. Or I'll get to it soon. And first of all, before we get to that, let's picture Joseph, what he does. Joseph leaves. Of course, he's sold down to Egypt. His brothers are very jealous of Joseph. And we can't understand where this jealousy comes from, because we're talking about very, very great people, the family of Israel. Yaakov is called Israel. Of course, we know that's his most important name. Jacob's name is Israel. And how could the children of Jacob, the children of Israel, be so abusive to their brother Joseph and be so mean to him and actually sell him down to Egypt, which all the brothers participated except Reuven, as we know, wasn't involved, and Benjamin, of course, wasn't involved. But how could this come about? And if we look very, very deeply, if we look into the past, we see how the brothers had this terrible jealousy. This terrible jealousy, of course, with the Ketoret Pasim, with the garment of the many colors. But what was that jealousy again about? It wasn't just a garment. If you look at, again, I mentioned, I think it is in past lessons, that the garment represents the multicoloredness of Joseph. Joseph was a person much different than his brothers in one way. And he was unique. And of course he had a difficult, as our rabbis teach us, a difficult childhood. As we know, he was greasing his hair, making his hair nice, and he went through his terrible teens. They didn't really understand his kochot, his power, his unusual strength that he had. But Jacob, the father, knew all around that he had a very, very special son here with a tremendous amount of potential, and eventually he would meet his potential. But the brothers could understand this. They thought they had another Esav in the house. What did they do with Esau? Esau was cast down, was separated from the house of Jacob, right? Isaac and Rivka, they knew that Esav wasn't going to be part of the house of Israel. So the brothers, following this, they realized that, and later, even before that, they knew the story of Isaac and Ishmael, that Ishmael was cast out of the house of Israel, and they thought, of course, Joseph was just another, I would say, black sheep of the family that had to be separated from the house of Israel, because they couldn't understand Joseph. But here was the difference, because every one of the children of Jacob were sacred and holy, and they were meant to be part of the house of Israel. But Joseph, again, was unusual. He behaved unusually. They couldn't understand this, and that's the real deep reason why they sold him down to Egypt. But what happens? That is where Joseph proves himself. When he gets cast down to Egypt, and he's amongst the most, I guess, lowest of lowest people on earth. The Egyptians, as we know, the culture was completely involved in uncleanliness and terrible, terrible things. And we just look at the house when Joseph was taken to the house of Potiphar, one of the ministers of Paro, and the wife, of course, just shows what this society is all about. She wants to commit adultery with Joseph, but Joseph is so powerful, and every single day she's nagging him and trying to entice him, and he's able to overcome that temptation and break away from that. And this again shows how the holiness of Joseph is so great and overcomes all the most difficult trials that there are. And we know this was a very, very difficult trial to be again enticed by this woman, and Joseph was able to overcome that. So this again here, Joseph proves again how he's connected in every way with his soul and being to the house of Israel, of being a very, very holy individual and able to overcome this evil culture. And what happens? If we look at that word of the Torah, when it says Joseph refuses to fall into the hands of this woman in adultery, what does it say? In the Hebrew word for refusing is vayima'en, to mean to refuse. But it's written in a beautiful, as we say, we know when we relay the Torah, we say it in a certain melody. And the melody looks like a zigzag, and that zigzag looks like a ladder. Looks like exactly like a ladder, and it sounded like this: Vayima'en. It's said 3 times, like a very, very powerful melody when it's sung, when we read the Torah every week. And that refusal by Joseph is the ladder that was missing in the dream, where I said the ladder was on the ground and the head of the ladder was reaching the heavens. So this was something I thought about many years ago, but it stuck out, that this is the ladder that connects. This shows here Joseph proves himself, what his potential is all about, and how he's able to hold himself back from this terrible sin of adultery. Number one. Number two, Joseph is able to, again, live amongst the Egyptian, live amongst the society and deal with these people with their idol worship, and being able to overcome and not be influenced by those terrible, terrible influences. And that, again, proves how great Joseph was, to become a leader and to rise up to the challenge of again, saving the world from a terrible financial crisis, but then again remaining with his identity and powerful Jewishness as the house of Israel. And that again is the amazing thing of Joseph. If we think about it, a very, very important concept we have to discuss. How did Joseph, he was able to do this? Where did it come from? Where does strength come from in order to overcome these terrible temptations all the time? As we mentioned, it just proves his potential, his inner potential. But this shows, of course, Torah, of course, doesn't happen or doesn't come like many people that are from the house of Israel, unfortunately, have fallen and undone terrible things. Joseph was maintaining, again, the beautiful Torah that he studied with his father. As our rabbis teach us, when he met his father again, finally had the reunion, they talk about one of the sugyot, as they say, that they were discussing together, what they were learning together. Last time they were with each other, the father was teaching him Torah. So without teaching Torah, without having that Torah constantly grow with us and learning, studying Torah, then God forbid we can lose our spiritual level and we can fall into terrible, terrible sins. And only through Torah study will maintain us and keep out the proper balance and spirituality. And that's what Joseph did. He was constantly studying. Although he was out there in the Egyptian world, he looked like an Egyptian, but he was able to overcome the temptations because he was always studying Torah. The stuff he learned as a child came back to him, and this is what he learned from his father. And this, of course, is the story of Hanukkah. Hanukkah is all about overcoming the culture, this Hellenistic culture that's out there, the dangers. There's such terrible culture out there now. The modern culture today is very similar to the ancient Greek culture in many, many ways. And this is not the time to go into a long, lengthy discussion, just to mention the things that go on, the terrible things that go on in society that we have to overcome. So the whole power of the Torah, of studying Torah and more and growing in Torah, will give us the strength to overcome these terrible things that exist in our modern society. If we also look again into the dreams, and this is what I mentioned before, of Yaakov Ariel, gave a beautiful insight. And he said, if you look at the dreams, what do we see? We see that Paro had these two ministers, and interesting, who were the ministers in his government were two people that were involved in food. And one was the minister of beverage, a beverage minister, or you want to call him the minister of beverages, alcoholic beverages, which is very, very strange. Just shows again that the society was built around drinking. In those days was wine. I mean, drinking wine, this was their part of the society. Bread is something very staple, but what happens if they have the dream, and who does Paro decide to kill? He kills the man that's in charge of the basic staple bread, baked goods. People can't live with bread, they can live without wine. But no, he decides to kill the minister involved in baked goods. Because that, living is not important if you're not drinking wine or getting blasted out of stone by drinking some wine, which that's more important in Paro's eyes, of course, to maintain the minister of beverage. If we also think about, I thought of another insight, if we think about the actual dream of the one who had the dream about the baker, the minister of baked goods had the dream, he had 3 baskets on his head. And on the upper basket, that's where the birds were eating from. I thought something very interesting. The upper basket, that was, if you look at all the dreams of Paro with the animals, they're eating from the floor, they're a low animal, right? Putting their heads in the ground all the time. And, of course, the grapevines growing out of the ground, and the sheaves are all things that grow out of the ground. But here, the baker had the highest dream of all those, this culture of Egypt. He had the highest dream. Why? He had a basket, which was on top of his head, but not only was it on top of his head, it was the highest basket. So he had his dream began to climb a little bit towards spirituality, something high. It was the highest he can get as a human being, right, on top of someone's head. But what did he do? he killed him. He cut his head off because, again, Paro was just showing that he has no connection to the spiritual worlds. And that's why he decapitated someone that represented maybe a little bit spirituality in his kingdom. He decided to decapitate and cause his own problems because that terrible crisis of the famine that came was only Joseph who came along and saved them later on. But it's very interesting we think about that because all the other dreams were very earthy, as we said. It was only Joseph that could connect both worlds and had the amazing, amazing power of doing that, which of course he got from his father Jacob. Jacob connecting the spiritual worlds to the lower world, and that of course is our function as humans in this world, because we can't rely on our physical being only. The physicality of the world will only take us away from God, away from God's presence. What we have to do as much as we can is to always combine both worlds. Take the physical world that God gave us, but sanctify this world. Sanctify the world, make the world light up with beautiful candles and beautiful, beautiful Torah, which represents the wisdom of the Torah, the candles. This is what we have to focus on, and this is what we have to work on as individuals in this world. Well, it's been a pleasure to be back again, and have a wonderful Hanukkah, wonderful Shabbat, and we'll be in touch very soon. Shabbat Shalom. Have a great, great, great Hanukkah. Bye-bye.